Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are on the road for part of our program. We are talking about intergenerational poverty. This is an issue that is particularly hard-hitting in rural Utah, and the state has led the nation really in a program to try to address it. In 2012, legislation was passed that created the Intergenerational Welfare Reform Commission, headed by the Lieutenant Governor as the chairman, and our guest, John Pierpont, who's the Executive Director of Workforce Services, and we are going to address this. Now, the Lieutenant Governor was going to originally sit with us, but his schedule is very busy. We had a chance to talk to him a little bit earlier today, and we wanted to get his impression of the origin of the IWRC. Lieutenant Governor Cox, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today about intergenerational poverty. You have been involved with this, if my memory serves me correct, even before you were Lieutenant Governor. How did this come onto the radar of Utah? How did this come on your radar?
Well, it started with a great legislator, Stuart Reed, out of Ogden, who was looking at the numbers and saying, I think we have a problem here, but nobody's really looking at it. And what he found was that that not all poverty was created the same. There's this idea of situational poverty where you're going along, everything's okay, and then something bad happens. You lose your job, you lose a spouse, you have a medical issue, you get a divorce, and you find yourself in poverty. And we have all of these programs to help people get back on their feet, and they tend to work for the most part. But what he found was there's another cohort of people who have been on these programs for generations. Their parents were, maybe their grandparents were, and the programs don't work. They don't have the same effect. They're not able to get off of these programs and back on their feet. And so he went to our Department of Workforce Services and started asking some questions. They started running some numbers, and sure enough, he was correct.
So how big of a problem is it? Why, somebody in suburban Utah, somebody even in a rural community who may not see this face of poverty say, well, why don't these people just get jobs?
Yeah.
How big of an impact is it to the state?
Yeah, and if it were that easy, obviously it would have been solved by now. It's a problem at the micro level, at the individual level. Again, as you get to know these people and see their struggles and their education backgrounds and the opportunities that just aren't there, you start to realize that it's much more difficult than we think. But it's also a problem at the macro level. It's a problem at the budgetary level. When you look at the spending on these types of programs, here in our state and in our country, it's unsustainable. We just can't continue to grow these programs and spend these dollars without making a difference and an impact. And that's why it matters, and that's why it should matter to everyone, whether you're dealing with it on the individual level or you're just dealing with it on the policy level.
Workforce Services, the commission that was formed by the legislation, came up with identified 10 counties, and you have toured all of them, talked to the local leaders. And the big emphasis from your office is that you have to have local involvement, that this is really a lift that the local counties are going to have to do. Are they receptive to that message? Very
receptive, all 10 counties, and at the municipality level, they're really engaged in this because they recognize too how important this is. And these are their neighbors. These are people we know, and we've seen it from parents, grandparents down to children. And the focus is on the children. We truly believe that if we can help break that cycle, we can get them the educational opportunities, the job opportunities, that they will be able to break that cycle. They'll be able to flourish and find success, be able to care for their families, and not pass that on to another generation.
In your 10-county travel, have you actually been able to talk to people who are in this trap of poverty?
Yeah, we have.
Do they realize they're in it? I mean, that's a fair question. Do they realize they're in it, or is it just a way of life to them?
It is, and they do, and everyone wants a better life for their kids, and the question is, how do we provide that? And too often they're just in survival mode. They can't look to the future. They've got to figure out tomorrow, and many of us forget what that's like, to just live day to day, trying to get by, trying to survive, and that's where we can step in and help, give them the resources, the tools that they need so they can start to look to the future and a brighter future for their children.
How long do you think it'll take for this to succeed? I mean, we're starting with a new generation.
Yeah, decades. I really do. And government isn't very good at looking down the road, but we have to. We really have to take the long approach to this. It's not something we're going to solve overnight, but we can start now. And if we start now, we'll make a difference 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Well, thank you very much for putting your passion into this issue. It's an important one. Thank you very much.
Chad.
Appreciate your being here.
It's a
I know
pleasure.
your schedule's busy, so we'll let you go.
Thank you.
We'd now like to welcome John Pierpont. Thank you for joining us for the show.
Thank you for asking me.
So the Lieutenant Governor kind of gave us this broader view of the whole program, but I'd like to know how it got on the radar and how Workforce Services started looking at these numbers and trends. Obviously, when Senator Reid was working on it, I'm sure that he had some interface with your department in the research. If you step back 6 years, we didn't make any kind of distinguishing comment about poverty, situational or intergenerational. It was just poverty. How did these statistics come up? What did you find them?
So you're right in the fact that Senator Reid came to Workforce Services asking a variety of questions about poverty and our programs that we administer at Workforce Services. And I think the most important question that he was asking at the time is, do you believe there's a welfare dependency issue in the state of Utah? And that was a question that we hadn't pondered much in the past. And so we quickly started to look at our data in regards to the results that we're getting with the families that we are serving. And we shared that with them. We get great outcomes when people come into Workforce Services. They're here for specific needs, and we're able to assess those needs and help them get to a place where they either become trained or get their high school GED and then eventually employment. That's what our mission is helping people get employed. That wasn't answering the question for him. He wanted us to dig a little deeper in regards to, is there a connection between parents and kids, and is it intergenerational? Is it being passed from one generation to the next? So we did a little deeper dive into our data, and we're seeing some connection between if you are on public assistance or welfare programs as a child, consecutive amount of time, 12 months or more, you have a higher likelihood of being on public assistance as an adult. And we can see it in our data now 4 generations back. Okay? And the only reason we can see it 4 generations back is that's as far as our data goes. It goes back to 1989.
That raises a question. Kids mimic what they see. So obviously, if they're in a welfare-dependent family and that's the way life is, that's how they see life is, they mimic, they mimic their family and go on from there. So, how have you decided to focus breaking that cycle?
So it's been a labor of love in regards to the data collection. Okay, so the first year we only had access to Workforce Services data. Senator Reid passed legislation that required our department to focus on data in regards to intergenerational poverty across multiple agencies. So over the last 4 years of the data collection, we now have a more robust set. Okay, it includes information from Department of Human Services, Department of Health, the school system, as well as the juvenile court system. So that initial report sheds some light on it, but as time has gone on, and we'll produce our 5th annual report on October 1st.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
It shows some challenges that these families are facing. And it's not absent in any county. It's in all 29 counties, top to bottom of the state. And so we've been working as a commission to try to align the work that's going on in the agencies, but also to reach out into the local communities, suggesting that most of the solutions should be generated at a county level.
And how have the counties been? You traveled with the Lieutenant Governor to the 10 target counties, so you were at every one of those meetings.
Yes, sir.
In the process of going to those meetings, how did very often counties will see something from the state and they'll say, oh geez, another unfunded mandate, and in this case, how did they receive it? Did they see it that way?
The Lieutenant Governor and I had several conversations about what the best approach to try to address it, at a state level as well as at a local level. And we chose 10 rural counties, as you suggested, where there are 30% or more of the children in that community are either children of intergenerational poverty adults, their parents were on welfare as kids, or they're at risk. And we define at risk as we can't see their parents' attachment to welfare programs, but we can now see that the kids have been on public programs for 12 consecutive months or more. Mm-hmm. And so if data plays out the way we've seen it, they could be the first of several generations that pass this lifestyle down to their kids. Okay, so when we went out to the local counties, one, it's to inform them of the work that the state's been doing in this regard, and really it took several meetings to get county commissioners and leaders in the community to understand the challenges that many of them face in their community. These are their friends, their neighbors, they're in their churches, and so forth. And we boiled it down to county snapshots. Okay, we have all this statewide data, which is great, but to boil it down for each specific county to show them at a county level what challenges that some of the folks in their community are facing is compelling for folks to act.
We got one more report. Basically, you're supposed to do a 5-year data collection. Is Workforce Services going to be providing some tools for local counties and local communities to work with going down the road past that?
Yeah. So the data report is due annually. Okay, so we update it each year to the legislature and to the governor. It's due October 1st, so we'll continue to produce that. The commission has established a 5- and 10-year plan, okay, around the 4 focus areas that we've defined to focus on the children. Okay, those are family economic stability, early childhood education, health, and education. Those are the 4 domains of child well-being that we've defined, and then we've developed a 5- and 10-year plan at the state level to try to address it.
We appreciate your taking the time. We're going to pull in a couple of the counties for our next segment and drill into those details at, as you mentioned, the granular level. Thank you so much for joining us here on the County Seat. We'll be right back with more of a County Seat on intergenerational poverty in just a minute.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake adventure, snowmobile action, pristine skiing, spectacular solitude. Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We're in part 2. We've talked to the Lieutenant Governor. We've talked to the Program Director at Workforce Services. Now, as he said, it goes to the county level and that's where these programs need to take place. So joining us for our conversation are 2 counties very interested in the topic. Jake Miller from Carbon County has joined us today. We have Dominica Watkins, who is the program manager for the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative in Weber County. That's a long title, Dominica. And we have Commissioner James Ebert from Weber County. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Does this kind of feel like it's a needed thing, but the state's come up with all this data and then just dropped it in your lap, or does it feel like it's a great opportunity?
You know, Chad, from Carbon County's perspective, it's been a great opportunity. We've had an effort ongoing with substance abuse in our area, and we had already formed a coalition to kind of combat that. And the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative fits right along with a lot of the same goals and targets a lot of the same individuals. And I would imagine Weber County and Carbon County both being some of the concern areas of the state of Utah, both over 40% likely of high school students remaining in IGP after graduation. We're both very interested in following through with this. It's kind of very timely.
In Weber County, the Commission really identified quickly that we want to create prosperity. And when we looked at how to create prosperity, we start with addressing poverty initiatives. And there's been a lot of poverty initiatives over the last 20 or 30 years, the war on poverty. But the reality of it is we understand if it's not child-centric, then the intergenerational continues moving from one family to the next family to the next family. So the power of this is it's created a data pool that allows us to identify children that are presently in poverty, and as was already mentioned, there's a higher percentage for those children to remain in poverty. And that data allows us to really focus in, create programming based upon data that we can move forward with evidence-based programs, and so it becomes much more powerful of a tool.
It needs to be needs-based. Just as a doctor prescribes a diagnosis based on the needs, we need to look at the data, which very timely has become available to us through the Department of Workforce Services, through the SHARP study, through all the different resources that are being provided us at this time, that we can then identify and target those few items that can make the biggest difference for our youth in our respective counties.
Now, you indicated that this program, both of you indicated what we need is some funding, and you're looking at different sources, but funding becomes a big part of this going forward. You have to get some money in the pool to actually deal with this. Is that right?
Well, it's one of the issues we have, and Dominica can probably speak to some of the things that we're doing with repurposing present funds, some of the SIB or social impact bonding that we could use, and some other methods.
So currently, as we've come together as a community, so we see intergenerational poverty and this initiative as really part of our overall community plan and our approach. And we've taken all of the partnerships and the collaborations that are currently in Weber County that have data that have proven success in so many of the different areas of child well-being, and we're bringing all of those people to the table. So if you look at the amount of resources just within our local governmental agencies, our nonprofits, our faith-based groups, our business stakeholders, these people have come to the table for the last 6 months. We've been meeting on a monthly basis and have poured their resources, their best practices into evaluating what we currently have in the county, how we can identify those gaps, how we even have overlap in some of those programs, and how we can bring that all together into identifying new tools, new approaches, new strategies to really affect this target population.
A more collaborative nature that can repurpose some of those funds we already have. And then we can go to the state and say, listen, we need a specific pool for IGP or a bucket, and then we can look at social impact bond for some investment with outside of the community, and then philanthropy dollars, and then business dollars, because there is some businesses that are very interested in reducing poverty because it does affect their bottom line.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to start with a question, though, because I hear the little critic spell going off in my head is what critics are going to be saying as soon as you say we need more money from the state. But it'll be an interesting conversation. We'll continue on the county seat right after this commercial break. Beautiful scene, isn't it? The great wide spaces of the wild, wild west. Hi, I'm Chad Booth, host of At Your Leisure. I'm asking you to support the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Their efforts responsibly preserve access to our public lands. If it were not for the Blue Ribbon Coalition and their efforts, you may not have access to millions of acres of land across the West. This is America's playground, and if we don't do anything, we are going to lose it. Join, participate and donate.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah. Mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com. The weekends just never feel like they're long enough. By the time you get to a destination, you're worn out and you may need a vacation to recover from your last vacation. The solution is closer than you think, and that's just what you need. You can find the desert at Little Sahara, the cool refreshment of Yuba Lake, escape to the green of the forest on the Nebo Loop. Make your escape to Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
When the road takes you farther than you knew possible. When the world is more beautiful than you've ever seen. When home is more comfortable than it should be. This is when you know you're in Kane County. The perfect mix of rural and urban, culture and adventure. Glendale, Orderville, Kanab, Bigwater, small towns with more to offer than just peace and quiet. Kane County, Utah. Find the new you.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative that's going on. We're looking at it from a county perspective. I wanted to toss out something that I know is going through people's minds is, okay, now we've started a new initiative and now we're going to go to the legislature. Now we want a whole bunch of money to start this program, and what are we going to get out of it? So I'm just going to toss that on the table and let you guys chew on that for a few minutes.
Well, you know, with John Pierpont and Lieutenant Governor Cox, they've identified that welfare serves 2 different kinds of people. Individuals that are just down on their luck and it's transitional, they just lost their job, they need a couple months of help and assistance.
Or situational poverty.
Situational poverty. And then there are those individuals that generation by generation, their grandparents, their parents, and their children are all poverty stricken, and they don't seem to be able to get out of the cycle. And so this IGP initiative, I believe, is meant to focus on those individuals. There's a lot of money being spent by the state and the federal government and others for those individuals, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight on getting them out of the cycle.
So you're basically, this whole thing is trying to switch the switch on the railroad track and start that next generation, detach it from the train and send it down another track?
Correct. And if we can shift some of the funding to, you know, from the programs that aren't making the biggest difference to perhaps something new that's more locally driven, specific to the local needs, then some of that funding would ideally make a bigger difference in our local areas.
Do you think it'll eventually save counties money if we can pull this off?
Well, I think that social impact investing, that's what it's predicated on. A belief that the investment at the front end will elicit dollars at the end. Those expenditures will be reduced. And that is how the whole social impact investing has been started and been very successful. We believe that's another funding source that we can use to address the intergenerational poverty. I just wanted to say really quickly, one of the things maybe we haven't talked about is an understanding that these programs are very specific, they're child-centric, is to break the cycle of poverty at a very young age. We trap children in poverty. We trap them in a paradigm where they don't understand what their full potential will be. And this program helps them break out of that paradigm by changing the environment that they're growing up in. And that type of savings will be really felt at the very end when they're in their 20s and now they're being productive. Now they're not using social programs. And that's where we think we'll see those savings.
Let's identify, I mean, obviously welfare and housing subsidies, which can affect a city or a county, but where are some of the other savings that you'll see by changing this track?
Truly, it's an investment in our community, in our people, and more specifically in our children. With over 40% of them at risk of continuing an IGP, that's a great concern. And so for our communities with our workforce, that's why Department of Workforce Services plays such a key role in this, is we're trying to influence the people that are most easily influenced to get them out of the cycle and into the workforce and into a productive life.
Do you see this as reducing mental health burdens?
Correct.
Law enforcement?
Substantially.
Substantially in the area of behavioral health. We know that toxic stress on children has long-term effects, behavioral health components. We know that the physical component is also with obesity and other areas of their health that become issues as they grow older. A quick example is children entering kindergarten that are not at the appropriate reading levels, have to go to specialized teachers, which cost twice as much. So there are all kinds of areas within the range of poverty that it affects that we believe there will be some type of savings at the end of the day. But the reality of it is, sometimes we talk about the numbers of savings, sometimes we talk about economic development or prosperity. This has probably more to do with the humanistic form of this and how it affects children, how it gives someone an opportunity to grow into their full potential. We want children to be very competitive, and this is a program that allows them to do that. They have to have three things. They have to have someone who cares about them. They have to have the ability to read, so that is the foundation of all education, and they have to have some form of accountability. We can provide that to these children, they'll be successful in life.
Very quickly, Domenica, are people excited about this as you engage them?
I'd have to say Weber County is primed to create a sustainable program. When you look at the amount of buy-in and support that we have already in the last 6 months, the amount of people that have come to the table and said, I want in, I want to figure out how we can create strategies that are sustainable. We want to be data-driven. We're looking at outcomes and indicators and benchmarks right now and saying, can we sustain these in Weber County? What is our long-term 5- and 10-year plan? So that buy-in right there is half of that battle, is getting that collaborative nature, bringing people to that table to understand the underlying issues, and that this is a child-centric community involvement fundamentally, not just a program. It is a community approach to changing the issues and the problems that we have within Weber County.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for watching and joining us on the county seat. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Be involved, be part of the process, and we'll see you next week on the county seat. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on the county seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of the county seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4 Good for Utah.